everybody doing? Happy Saturday. Welcome to the Soul Purpose Show. Y'all know if our head is down, that means I'm trying to do double duty. My partner, my rider is not here with me because he's given me the month of March to do Circle of Sisters, which I have coined as a celebration of melanated magic. And so if you've joined us over the last few Saturdays, you know that I have invited some beautiful Black women who I admire and are very near and dear to me for a variety of reasons. We started off the month with my mama, the queen, who gave us sage wisdom, and it was just a really good conversation. But I love my mama, so any conversation with her is good. Last week, it was Candace Nunn Johnson and Katie Brinson, and we just had a really great conversation, lots of giggles. But really good information, and my spirit was filled when we left that show. And then this week, I am just so excited to cap off our month-long celebration with 4 women who I have admired from afar for a very, very long time. And so some I'm just getting to know, and I just admired them through just their works. Some I've known for a while, but each of these women I invited for a particular reason, and you'll learn that shortly. But I just wanted to jump right into the conversation and invite my guests. We're blessed today around the table, the virtual table, Desiree Noisette, Yah Layford, Sarah Michelle, and Lennise Germany. Ladies, good morning. How are y'all doing?
Good morning.
Great, thank you.
Great Saturday, everyone. Great Saturday.
So I am super excited about this conversation. As we talked before we went live, the reason I wanted to do this month was, we looked at the last year. Last year was tough for everybody, right? COVID had us locked down. But the one thing I kept noticing was, despite all the lockdowns and the fact that we have not been able to gather and engage, sisters have consistently been showing up, showing out, even in the midst of the pandemic. I mean, I'm here to tell y'all that all 4 of you all, when I'm on social media, it's like COVID didn't even happen, because you all are living y'all best lives in the midst of a pandemic, right? So I did want to bring y'all on because I do want to have that type of conversation about how resilient we are as a people, and whether that's for intentional or just kind of the nature of who we are. But before we get in, I want y'all to have the opportunity to introduce yourselves to our listening audience. And I'm gonna start with you, Desiree, and then go to Yah, then Sarah, then Lennise. Desiree, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Desiree Noisette. I am the owner of Mimosa Wines, and I'm also the first Black woman in Florida to own a wine brand and a winery license. My wines are inspired by my great-grandmother, Celestine Noisette. She was an amazing great-grandmother from 7 generations ago. She grew up in what is now known as Haiti, and she ended up moving to Charleston, South Carolina, and she used her powerful voice to negotiate freedom for herself and her children. It's a really amazing story. So she's the mermaid. She's our siren from swimming free in our sea. So when you see our brand, you can kind of think of her powerful audacity infused in every sip. We've got 4 wines out. Mimosa, it's like a mermaid's version of a mimosa, less sugar, less carbs. It's excellent. And then Merseco, no sugar. It's a sparkling white wine. We also put Mimosa in a can. And then we have Celestine Rosé, named after Celestine, my great-grandmother.
That is awesome. I did not know the background to the story, so that's great. We're going to dig into that.
Okay.
And so for y'all know, the last couple of weeks, my husband has me in the kitchen cooking. I don't know if that's good or bad, but I'm not cooking today. I'm making drinks, and so I'm going to be using one of Desiree's products to make a drink. So y'all go ahead.
So I think I'm defined as a visual artist. However, I consider myself an educator and foremost a transporter, working between the visual and our community through a wide range of mediums that include paint and sculpture and installation and video and sound. So I create site-specific, bold, geometric paintings with themes of transformation and transcendence and the power and redefining the power of art. And I'm building these works with a unique sort of vocabulary of intersecting lines, of gestural repetition that create a very distinct impact. I believe each of my lines are connecting each other to humanity and this unseen journey, and trying to wind everyone into a place of being the best human they can be.
Awesome. Awesome. Sarah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah Michelle Herring. And I basically consider myself, I'm just this little Black girl from Southeast DC, right? And so I've always been Sarah Michelle. When I was born, I was Sarah Michelle Washington. I am now Sarah Michelle Herring, being married to my amazing husband, Demetrius Herring. I have three amazing children, and I am committed to a life of evolution. And so that has continued to show up as I've have pivoted from one business model to the next. Most people know me as a global business innovator and a trendsetter through fashion impact by Handbags You Like, which is a global boutique and brand. I've also pivoted into being an author, also a real estate investor and developer, where our focus is creating affordable housing options for those in need. And so what you will constantly hear and see from my life, even with all of life's challenges and trials, is what I touch. My desire is that God will get the glory through impact and through purposeful intentionality, through the power of relationships and connectivity. Thank you, and I'm grateful to be here. I
Absolutely.
appreciate you, Monty.
Absolutely. I love you. Lennise.
Listen, I don't know how to go behind any of these ladies. And Sarah, you sound like you just dropped a whole word on us for sure. Monica, thank you for this platform and thank you for considering me. My name is Lennise Germany. I am the CEO of Livio's Catering Company, and we offer corporate and private catering services. We also are a vendor for the United States Department of Agriculture. So we perform breakfast and lunch for charter and private schools throughout the community, primarily Title I charter schools. So if you're familiar with education, you know that that's the lower income, lower funded areas. And in addition to that, we have our cafe that is launching in April over at St. Petersburg College. So we started out as a caterer, just doing weddings and banquets, selling meals from the trunk of our car over 6 years ago or so. And we've grown now into a full food service company. And so like my unicorn is to model our business very much like an Aramark or a Sodexo, that can perform internationally perhaps. And right now we're doing those services, but just on a more local county, Hillsborough County, Pasco County, Pinellas County level. Again, we started our business out of the trunk of our car 6 years ago, almost 7 years ago now. And the name Levy, after quitting my job in corporate America, because I call myself a corporate dropout, actually. But the name of our company is the children that my husband and I share. I am a mother of six. The name of the company, though, is our 10-year-old daughter, Liv.
Oh no. Hopefully she'll get back in. So Lennise will be back. We lost her, but I do want to. One of the things that you all said was talked about pivoting, and that's one of the reasons that I brought you all in. But before we get there, March is Women's History Month, and I have not always celebrated Women's History Month. I acknowledge Women's History Month, but I have not really been a big celebrator of Women's History Month, not for any particular reason. I've always celebrated Black women though. And so I would like to know kind of what, if anything, women's history, why is it important that we, particularly as Black women, celebrate Women's History Month? And I'm going to start with you, y'all.
I think it's really important to remember the contributions of women and notable and ordinary women. I think when I think about women, I think about my mom, I think about the womb, I think about this safe space. And I hope one day we're starting to see the impossible come through with women being vice president. And I think that we can learn and have a prominence of power and legacy on our own right. Because when you think about historically what women were and what our purpose was, we have redefined it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important to learn from that legacy and remember these contributions.
Yeah. Desiree, what about you?
I'm so glad you asked this question because I've got two boys at home. I've got a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old, and then of course my husband. And to me, it's really important that we raise our children in a way that normalizes women being in successful, powerful leadership roles. And so last month, right, we have Kamala Harris, our VP, getting sworn. Wait, 2 months ago. Sorry, we're in March. I don't know what month it is. Anyway, so when that happened, my 6-year-old son in his class the next day, I remember him, or no, it was the same day because they got to watch the inauguration in class, and he's, first grade, and he told his classmates, he said, women can be president too, and I was like, I'm on the right path, and now. And then the other day we were watching. I don't know if I should have had this on, but The Glorious. It's about Gloria Steinem, and it just started a whole discussion in my house about, and with my 6-year-old and my 3-year-old sitting there, or he's 4 now actually, listening and everything, talking about just women being able to get credit cards and how they needed their husband's permission and all of these things that to my children sound insane. And I think it's important that our children understand that it wasn't always this way, and that women have had to fight to get to these places. And I also, on the other side, want them to see it as normal.
Yeah.
It's normal for women to be in these places,
For
so
sure.
that when they are in their jobs going, in the future, they're treating women properly, and they're not, we don't have to worry about them being the problem makers.
Right. Sarah, same question.
I think it's very important for women to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. And by doing so, we sound the alarm. So we are women and we make history. The power of that pivot that was so made evident to me, even during this pandemic, is there was a time and a space that women could not even acquire a mortgage unless they had a man signing on the line with them. That within itself is mind boggling to me. And so when women realize there's a power in your voice, there's a power in your stance. And when we realize that it is very important that we continue to move through extreme intentionality to not just show up, but make a difference, not just for us, but for the legacies that are to come forward even after us, right? And so rows are set so that we could stand. You understand? There are those, so we have to continue to pay homage and be grateful and not feel like we are self-made. None of us are self-made. Someone paved the way, someone did the work. And so then we can't just think we're going to just arrive. So faith without works is dead. So what are you doing today that's make a difference for the generation 50 years from now? Will your name be mentioned in the archives? Will your name come across social media that there was something different that Monica did that the little girl in 60 years can say, because she did that, I'm able to do this.
Right.
And so not to be so nostalgic about history that we're not intentional to make history even today.
Absolutely. That's awesome. That's awesome. One of the things that each of you all said, and I pray that Lennise can get back in, because I know that when I talk about the pivot, her story, I know because we've had many conversations, and we just had I was on the phone crying with her because we just really had a moment in terms of her pivot and her intentionality in the pivot and her exercise in faith in her pivot. And each of you all have pivoted, because I know Desiree and y'all, what you all are doing now is not what you are. And it may, y'all, maybe perhaps it was, but I know for a fact what Desiree is doing now was not how I met her. And I know that y'all, as I mentioned at the beginning, that you, maybe at the beginning or in our previous conversation prior to going on, that you went to law school with my sister. So I know that you have a law degree. And Sarah, you pivot all over the place. So all of you have pivoted. When did you know that the pivot was what you needed to do? Because I think there are a lot of Black women who are in their space professionally or in any space, and they know in their core that what they're doing is not living their purpose. but they're afraid to make that pivot. So I would love for you all to share with us, in that moment when you knew you had to pivot, what was that feeling like? And kind of when you made the pivot, how did you just step out and do the pivot? That's kind of a two-pronged question. So y'all, I'm going to start with you with that question.
So I think it's quite a privilege to be a Jamaican and to be brought up in America.
Mhm.
And when you grow up in a Jamaican family, part of the rules is you don't argue with your parents and you become a lawyer, a doctor, or an engineer.
Okay.
And I think, having said that, I finished my academic career with a law degree and an MFA. Though everything I would have hoped my parents taught me, they were useful, but I knew I was missing something. And I think I was learning about myself through my journey. And through this, though I learned through academics, what an atom is made of and how political systems function. What was most important was finding my passion and how I can impact humanity.
Mhm.
And I got introduced to arts early, and my parents accepted it. But how do I turn this hobby into a career? And I think it was when I started to think about, how do I fulfill that need of what I need to do to bring out the best of everyone else, as a juxtaposed to defining myself within the context of the institution.
Mm.
And I think my parents brought me up to fit into the institution and then work within the institution. So I think I had to find value in myself. And once I found that value, I then knew I could share and connect and figure out ways of really holding on to each moment. And I think it took my husband, it took mentors, and it took really bravery.
Mhm.
And I think, as Sarah said earlier, intention. And I think when you kind of take all of those and build it up with courage, something very magical begins to happen,
Mhm.
because you're then paving your own path, not one that's been built through these institutions, but one in which you can create and you can become a professional troublemaker. You
Yeah.
can decide how you're going to critique the world. And I think that that is kind of the short end of my path.
Awesome. Desiree, same question.
Um, it's kind of wild, and I'm gonna get real personal here for a minute, but so I was practicing law. I practiced construction law. That's how we met,
Mhm.
Monica. And I worked at a really great firm, wonderful people. I was married at the time to another lawyer. He practiced corporate law. Wonderful, wonderful man. Um, and this was 2010, 2009, 2010 timeframe. I started having some medical issues,
Mhm.
and they were, and it was pretty scary. We didn't know, did I have cancer? And they had to go in and do exploratory surgery. And then when they went in, they couldn't tell me whether I'd, leave with a uterus or not. And so it was a really um, tough situation. And then after, I ended up not having cancer, thank God. And I had my uterus intact and all of that stuff. But then after I came out and healed up, um, I had significant trouble getting pregnant.
Mhm.
And my husband at the time and I went through IVF, and it wasn't successful. And then afterwards, we took a moment and we really evaluated our relationship, and we decided, um, and it was a really good decision, but we decided to split up. And it was the fastest divorce of all time. He was a corporate attorney, so he wrote it up. I signed it. We were good to go. He's actually now, over a decade later, he's my corporate attorney
Oh.
in my company with my new husband's permission. But anyway, so we split up, and then all at the same time, I've been practicing law about 5 years. And as you know, Monica, when you're at a firm, that's kind of when you have to decide, are you going to get married to all of these partners at this firm and
Right.
become a shareholder and do this for the rest of your life? or are you going to strike off on your own or do something else?
Yeah.
And I had just had all of those things happen. I was going through a grieving process. I didn't know how much I wanted kids until I had it, seemingly taken away. And, my husband and I had split up, and I didn't have anybody to tell me no. And so I was trying to figure out, what am I going to do with my life? Is this really, do I want to argue or think about arguing all day? And on top of it, I was practicing construction law, which is a heavily white male dominated field. There are virtually no women, and the women that are involved, there are probably less than 5 in the country that are African American. So imagine going to court with contractors that don't look like you, and they don't necessarily believe in you. So when I think about building a book of business, it was unlikely I was going to have folks actually hire me on. Anyway, so I decided to jump ship. My friend and I were out one night having margaritas and eating nachos and complaining about how hard swimwear shopping was for finding stuff for our body types. And next thing you know, I'm writing a business plan. My ex-husband agreed to give me my cash from our house together so I could jump on a piece of real estate for my store that I ended up starting. And that was 2012. And so here I am now.
Awesome. I mean, and I remember, just real quick, I remember hearing that you left the practice, and all of us, I'll be frank, many people won't tell you this. We were all like, oh my God, Desiree is like our hero. How did she get out? How did she escape? But I remember coming over to St. Pete and seeing your boutique, and was just in awe at the fact that you made this. That's a huge pivot to leave one profession and go to the other. So Lennise, what we're talking about, and I'm gonna go to Sarah and then come to you, is we're talking about this pivot because Sarah mentioned it in her very beginning. And I know that all of you all have pivoted. And the question is, I mentioned you in terms of our conversation before I came to speak at your event about the pivot and about how you made your pivot and about what that connection was, and me crying and just really releasing a lot of what's on me in terms of the nervousness. So the question that I'm asking everybody is, how did you know that you had to make that pivot, and where were you, and how did that feel? What motivated you to make the pivot? So Sarah, I'm going to go to you, then I'm going to go to Lennise next.
Okay. So the announcement of the pandemic happened. My husband and I and our team, which stretches across the nation, we're planning to be on the road literally for like 6 to 8 months straight. You name an organization, you name a conference, we were literally going to have physical presence there. I mean, with a robust setup, with a robust display. So that means after being in business for almost 20 years, we had even gotten used to the art of preparation, because it does matter how you show up and how you showcase, and even your presentation, all of that matters. So I take that very seriously. And so when this announcement came that we're now going on shutdown, my husband and I, we're looking at mounds and mounds and mounds of inventory in our warehouse based here in Atlanta. And I'm like, yo, what? So no physical interaction, no showcasing. Yo, we've invested like all of this money into all of this inventory, and it's just not the same virtually. Let's be all the way clear. As amazing as these platforms are, it's not the same as the personal interaction. And then our clients have the nerve to be super spoiled because the level of detail and attention that we pay. So just honestly speaking, I wasn't doing good. Okay. That thing worked on my mind real bad. And I had to choose to go in before God. And I went in about 3 to 4 days. I mean, I almost liken it unto sackcloth and ashes. I went down. I went down to go in. And at the end of that time, the Lord said, okay, it's enough of this. Okay, you've been moaning, crying, but it was necessary. And at the end of that period, he said, it's 2 things that I need you to do in this season. He said, I need you to reset, and I need you to pivot. And he said the reset is for you to adjust the way in which you're viewing what's in your hand. right? He said, and the pivot is necessary because clearly you cannot continue to operate right now the way you've been used to operating. That has worked, but it's literally beyond your control. And so in that, I decided to undergird through the Holy Spirit, and I chose to see the power of that pivot. The power that is found in the pivot. And I mean, literally, we began showcasing virtually. One day, we ended up making more money. I mean, it literally had me in tears. And it wasn't about the money, it was about agreeing with God. And so, even after showcasing virtually, the Lord began to really show me the necessity for affordable housing and real estate development and investment. And in all honesty, if we could all be honest for a second, if your schedules are anywhere as demanding as ours had become, if we had not had that time to literally sit down and recalibrate what we were doing with our time, what we were doing with our lives, we weren't even having a healthy balance. As amazing as you are, at some point with all the juggling and competing priorities, you're not even having a healthy balance to literally enjoy the fruits of your labor. So I began to see the beauty of the moment, although it was painful. So I began to decide to shift my perspective and not see that glass as half empty, but see it as half full. And when I tell you the floodgates begin to open, it was like it's literally as soon as I begin to say we're now operating in a space of affordable housing and real estate investment and real estate development, the power in that was I once had a Section 8 voucher. I once got food stamps. I once received a welfare check. How dare you, Sarah, be bold enough, be courageous enough to now step into a territory where you're now able to make a decision for others who are now in a position that you were once in. So what am I saying? I begin to see the power in the shift and the transition to now be the answer that I once needed. That was the power that I began to embrace and not just cry over spilled milk, but see the nutrients of that milk that's still there and let that thing matriculate to allow me to journey on and to make a difference.
Now do y'all understand why I ask these people? Do you understand why I ask these folks to be on? So Lennise, I know your story and we have 3 minutes till break, but I don't want you to be cut off by no commercial. So while we go to break, I'm gonna make a drink. I probably should not make a drink. And my mama, who is a good Christian woman, is gonna say, how you gonna make a drink after she don't preach the word? But I'm sorry. I'm going to make the drink because we have 3 minutes. So real quick, the drink is super, super easy. It's a blueberry sage. I like drinks that have herbs in them and fruit. So it is, and if you're not a fruit person, you're not gonna like this. It's blueberries. Just put a little blueberries in the bottom of this. And you have some sage leaves. Get a couple of sage leaves. So I'm gonna send this to you. I'm gonna send this to you, Miss Caterer. So I found this recipe, but I'm tweaking it a little bit because what she had I didn't really like. So I have blueberries and sage in the bottom of this. I'm gonna add half an ounce of simple syrup, and the caterer will tell you, do not go spend $4 on simple syrup. Simple syrup is equal parts water and sugar, and then boil it. Let's dissolve. Do not spend money. Don't spend $4. I'm telling you, if I find out that y'all spend $4 on simple syrup, I'm really upset.
It's gonna be a problem.
It literally is 1 part sugar, 1 part. So you'll do half an ounce of simple syrup. You can add a little bit more if you like a little bit sweeter, and half an ounce of vodka. Do this. Look at this. I'm killing time. Half an ounce of vodka. Put that in the bottom of this, and then you're going to muddle all of this together. And you don't want to muddle it too much because you don't want the sage to get bitter. But you're gonna just muddle it real quick. And we got a minute till break. I'm gonna do this. You're gonna put some ice in it. You're gonna shake it. You're gonna pour it into your champagne glass. You can rim this with sugar if you want, which means you have to put some type of fruit liquid on top, and then dip it in sugar if you want. But you're gonna muddle this. Put some ice in it, shake it up, pour it in your glass, and then top it off with some champagne. And then I'm going to have it done by the time we're back. And that was a minute, and I'm actually pretty good, and I'm not even a caterer. Bim! All right, we'll be back after the commercial break.
Wherever we go, we about to bring on the positive vibe. Wherever we go, we are going.
In Touch Radio, where you can listen to a cruising flow of smooth soul and jazz, today's R&B, a fun touch of hip-hop and gospel.
All my music on one station.
Giving you a buffet of music, news, and entertainment. We're In Touch Radio.
Hey, this is Agent Wright, better known as Mr. Clean. You looking for some great barbecue? Come see them two brothers on the grill, located at 423 Virginia Street, Charleston, West Virginia. We got ribs, chicken, pulled pork, brisket, collard greens, mac and cheese, baby. Come get some and get you a nice, smooth cigar. 304-550-4431. That is 304-550-4431. Come get some, baby. The Rib Man, mama, the Rib Man.
Wherever we go, we about to bring on the positive vibe.
All right, we're back. So I wanted y'all to see this. So I've put everything in my little shaker. You're gonna strain it into your glass. So it kind of has this purplish color. And then you're going to, I'm using my mimosa. You're gonna put some champagne on top. And I do this wrong all the time. My girlfriend really gets upset with me. There should be more bubbles, but I've drunk some of this. So there's not as many bubbles as it should be, so. But there's bubbles. I promise you, when you pop it, there are bubbles in this. We did it last week and it was bubbles. Okay, and then you're gonna top this off with a couple of blueberries, like that. And if you wanna get a little thing of sage just for garnish, you're gonna get a sage leaf and pop it in there like that. You'll make it prettier, Lennise, but there it is. I have no idea how this tastes because I just found this recipe. So I'm tasting it for the first time now.
It sounds absolutely delicious.
This is really good.
It sounds delicious.
It's very good, very refreshing. Okay, so I made my drink, got that out the way. So Lennise, I do want to, same question for you, because I know we've talked about your pivot experience and it's a testimony. If you can condense it just a little bit, but I want people to hear your pivot story because it aligns with kind of, go ahead.
Amen. So, and Monica, just in your drink, if you light the sage, like burn it a little bit, drop it in the drink, it'll smoke, it'll give you like a smokier type.
Keep talking, I'm going to do that now.
Yeah, do that. Okay, so my pivot, I pivoted more than once. I mean, you pivot initially when you take the leap of faith to start your business. And so again, I mentioned that I was a corporate America dropout. For 2.5 years, the Lord had this thing on my heart to become an entrepreneur. And I had no idea what that looked like. So my level of faith didn't necessarily trust that I could become an entrepreneur. And so it was a burden that if I didn't adhere to what he was telling me, I would still be sitting on my corporate America job or perhaps in some other corporate America job. And there's nothing at all wrong with corporate America, don't get me wrong. It just, the calling on my life it wouldn't leave me alone. Okay. Let me just put it that way. So in the pivot, as Monica mentioned, we started out our business again in the trunk of our car selling meals, and then it transitioned into our first brick and mortar a little bit over 4 years ago by doing weddings and banquets and things of that nature. And then when COVID happened, like Ms. Sarah mentioned, our calendar is very color coded. And it was like every single day of the week, there was something going on, whether it was catering on-site or off-site, because we had a intimate event space, whether it was we had one school at the time we were doing school meals for. I would do a lot of public speaking and hosting my own events outside of the organization. So every single day of that calendar had something going on, to the point that people would look at it and get nervous, like, oh my God, you're that crazily busy. And then COVID hits and erases the calendar. Like, I've never seen my calendar erased before. Mm-hmm. And so erasing those things also meant erasing revenue, which also meant that I can no longer provide money or income for the employees that actually supports this business. And that was, for me, heartbreaking. Like, I'm like, Lord, like, no, this can't really be happening. And I worried more so for them than I did for myself, because I'm an expert at struggle. I grew up in that. So the same day that the government said that we had to shut down our business, which was March 16th, was also this very same day that we were at the hospital with our 12-year-old son who was being diagnosed with cancer. Same day. I can't make that up. That morning, we get an email while we're sitting in the waiting area to find out what was going on with our son, because he had this thing. He called it a bump. I thought it was a mass. I didn't know what it was, but it was a huge tumor on the inside of his jaw that caused his jaw to be like this to deform his face, basically. We had no clue what it was. And so my husband had took him to the ER the week before. The ER says, yeah, we got to see him again. They ran some tests, but we had no clue. We're just thinking, oh, it's just something that'll be removed. But that day we were at the doctor's office to get whatever the diagnosis was. We get the email from the state that we got to shut it down. And so they call us into the waiting room. And yeah, by the way, your son has cancer and's got to go on chemo for over a year. And so instantaneously, my world like exploded for both business and personal at the exact same time. What we took that whole weekend, of course, to be personal and mourn and weep and cry, and because this was not at all expected. And then that Monday I woke up, my husband and I had the conversation that we are not about to argue any longer over stupid stuff. Because this is serious. So if it doesn't matter, let's not even bring it to the table. B, the business still has to go on. We just wasn't sure in what way. And then C, our son is going to be fine.
Yes, amen.
We are not thinking at all about death. So he'll be fine. And so it was in that moment that months, we tried little things throughout the whole pandemic at the beginning. And I was just like, listen, I'm not about to be desperate for this thing. We're not about to lower ourselves and our standards to stay in business. And so I came up on this podcast where this pastor was speaking about pivoting, and I use a lot of sports analogy. And he said that when the quarterback throws the ball to the receiver, he throws it to where the receiver is going or should be. So if you're going to pivot, focus on where the economy is going. And I let that manifest in my mind. And I was like, Lord, schools. That's the evident thing that is going to happen, because weddings and banquets are not right now. That erased our calendar. People aren't getting married. People aren't celebrating in large capacities anymore. And so whenever I'm in a tight situation and don't necessarily know what to do, I always ask, what do I know? And then once I have that conversation with myself, who do I know? Because you have a network, girl, use it. And I cast my net in the sea of resources on schools and people who knew schools, people who were associated with schools, because we had only performed one school. And I committed to closing at least 5 contracts. We ended up closing 9 at the end of the summer during the pandemic. So we closed the pandemic year grossing more, like you, Miss Sarah, grossing more money than we have ever grossed in our little 6.5 years of business. Yep. Like this is the business is not unto death, because I did not put this on your brain and on your heart for 2 straight years before you decided to quit. To take it from you. Like trust me. And so that's what we did.
The thing that I'm hearing is consistently is about resiliency, is about being true to your purpose, is about listening to your Holy Spirit, listening to the universe, if that's who that's what you believe in. I believe in the Holy Ghost and in God. And so I believe when he tells me to do it, for the last 5 years, and those who know my story about my son know that I have operated in the a spirit of obedience and blind faith. And so when you do that and you're operating in the spirit of obedience and blind faith, none of these things surprise me. None of this surprises me. The fact that the 4 of you all the pivot has been a blessing. There's been a blessing in the midst of the storm because you all have pivoted. Desiree is the first Black woman to have a winery, and I'm going to assume that happened in the midst of a pandemic. Am I right?
Yes, absolutely. Our brand took off during.
Lennise has made the pivot in the midst of the pandemic. Sarah has made the pivot in the midst of the pandemic, and y'all has made. So I'm going to talk about some of these transitions and how you being obedient, just kind of following your purpose, leads you to things beyond. The scripture says, and I am not a pastor, and so Sarah, I know that you do. So I may quote scripture wrong, but your faith and obedience will lead you before great men, right? I think that's right. Pastors, Sarah may not be a pastor, but she's I believe some people have just one-on-one conversations and have direct connection between them and God. I think I do, but I also have an intermediary who's my mama and my sister. But I'm joking when I say that. But when you're obedient, it leads you beyond. It leads you. You'll be before kings and great men. And I'm paraphrasing very badly. One of the things I want to highlight is I know Levy, Lennise, and Yah. The Super Bowl was in Tampa this year, and we had a young woman, LaKendria, who was pivotal in ensuring that the business opportunities that were going to be spread in the midst of the vendors and the vendorship opportunities for the Super Bowl, that there was some diversity involved in that. And Bamitra Salter-Liggins was involved in that as well. And so you got Black women at the table who are advocating for Black women. And I don't want people that are watching this to miss this. I did this intentionally. I listened, and this is intentional. Being an advocate, if you're at the table, you need other people along this walk as well. But Black women have to advocate for each other when we have seats at the table. And so LaKendria and Bamitra advocated for using your resources for Lennise, for Yah, and as a result, Lennise was a caterer during Super Bowl, which is huge. Yah, and I'm gonna get this wrong, so if I'm incorrect when I say this, y'all, I want you to correct me. Yah did a piece for the Super Bowl, and as a consequence of that, is curating, and that's the wrong term because I'm not in the artist world. That's wrong, then please correct me. But she is making pieces for each of the owners of the NFL as a consequence of her involvement with the Super Bowl. That ain't nothing but him. And it's because Black women advocated for her by sitting at the table, right? So we have to I'm using this platform to encourage people to use y'all, right? I don't know what will come from this because that's not why I did it. But I want people to know who you are so they can use you use you all, reach out to you all so you all can advocate for them and they can advocate for each other. But yeah, I want you and Lennise to talk about your Super Bowl experience because that is huge. I don't know if this ever happened, particularly y'all for you. I don't know if this ever happened, but the fact that you're about to make pieces of work for all of the NFL owners and your works will be hung somewhere where they will see it every day, that's huge. That's huge. I'm gonna start with you first.
It is huge, and I'm so deeply humbled. And I think as a Black woman in the arts, I've always felt successes are way bigger than it being about myself. And I think this idea is fueled by no matter how scared or nervous you are about what you're about to do, I'm humbled because I always know it's not about me, it's about my community. And so the need to succeed is natural, right? It's our natural human desire. Yet for Black women, our success is beyond simple bragging rights or a pat on our back. Our successes represent our culture and something way bigger than our own personal victory, which is a heavy load for us to carry. So when I think it's a fact that Black women face greater adversity and are presented with less opportunity. So as a Black woman with a platform, it's our responsibility, I think, to show up more than prepared and push doors open for others. So because of this lack of access and opportunities, the stakes for us are different. And there's a feeling that we must serve by example. And I think just to circle back to LaKendria and Bamitra, that's a prime example of just soul and heart and being courageous and the vibrations when we really help each other and lift each other up. And what's possible and knocking down those impossibilities. And as a result of someone having a voice where I wasn't, I'm able to then share my craft and tag it for someone else. And I think that's why, further than me just creating and doing work, I gift my skills to 100 Black kids on the south side of St. Pete every 3 months to make sure that they can think about how they can use their creative capacity, even if they're not an artist, but how they think outside of the box that they've been given and how they can then further themselves and our community. I think that we're all entangled with each other. And when we could see the brilliance of our Blackness, that's when something really special happens.
Awesome. Lennise, I'm gonna flip to you because I know that was huge for you all as well. I was cheering. I wasn't cheering for the Bucks, but we all know that. But I was cheering for y'all. I was cheering for you all. I was cheering for y'all. But go ahead and tell us about your experience with the Super Bowl.
No worries. I'll be brief. Our experience with the Super Bowl was absolutely phenomenal. It was extremely overwhelming. Extremely overwhelming. It was one of those eras, that specific week where there was so much going on and the enemy is very tricky. It was so much going on. We had actually committed before we even knew that we were going to be awarded the opportunity to service the Super Bowl. We had already decided that we were going to turn away any normal business because what we did not want to do was be committed to normalcy when we've got this huge opportunity to possibly. So it wasn't, I had prepared as if, and Miss Sarah, I already know you know the scripture because I'm not a pastor either, so I don't know the
I'm about to go on.
But listen, but we had prepared ourselves as if we were already awarded. That was what we did. And so I'm in the office now. We had our big, large sticky notes planning out the week as if we were going to do it. And so the opportunities for the bids had come, and we said we're gonna submit these bids. We dotted every I, crossed every T. We had already been prepared as far as certifications were concerned and things of woman-owned, Black-owned, minority-owned, all of those certifications we've had for years. We were sitting on them, not really knowing what to do with them. So when the criteria came that this, and this you had to have, and we were like, oh, check, this much insurance, check. And it was like, send it. And we sent it anyway. LaKendria didn't even know that we had gotten awarded because I didn't disclose that information to everybody. Like I didn't, and she and I are close, like we're good friends. I didn't want it to come off as if it were a favoritism thing because it wasn't at all. We did the work.
Yeah.
We did the work.
Yeah.
And so the fact that when we got the whole congratulations, you're approved or you're going to be a vendor, and we saw what it was that we were performing, initially I almost got insulted because it was salads. And I said, seriously? That's what we're doing? We're doing salads? This is the easiest thing on the goddamn, and then it was like the Holy Spirit is no, boo, humble yourself. If you're going to do a salad, you better make it the best salad you ever made in your life, and you make it memorable. And so when we found out that we were doing salads and we had to do, it was so much that they required. It had to be a certain temperature. It had to present a certain way. It had to be transported and all these rules that I have never in my life seen before. And we did it.
He's preparing you for something greater. He's
preparing me for, that's the thing. So coming out of that, let me tell you, I need the people to know this. There was 2,000 salads that we had to physically prepare in a small portion because it was all pre-made. What we did not have was refrigeration. We didn't have this proper storage. And again, Holy Spirit says, cast your sea in the ocean of your resources. Who do you know? Because you won't get it if you don't, like, if you don't know who you can ask. Like, you have to ask for help. And I went to my board because I sit on a few boards. I went to my board members. I went to my network out here in the area where we are because it had to be close. It had to be somewhere we can have in and out access to 24 hours a day. And I was like, listen, hey, network, we're excited about performing the Super Bowl, but here's the pitfalls that we are about to experience. So who do you know that can help us with refrigeration? And the Holy Spirit turned it around in a day where a church offered a huge walk-in cooler 6 minutes away from where we are, 24-hour access at no charge to us. I mean, this is God. And it was all days before, like hours before that we had to perform this. And so sitting in that Super Bowl experience was like, it just groomed us to say, no, you can do this, and you will do this, and you'll do it at the level of excellence that these people like LaKendria and Bermuda are advocating you for. Because not every business and not every minority-owned business, and I'm not just talking about Black businesses, but not every business can perform at that level.
Yeah.
Not truthfully. And they're out here saying that, no, these businesses can do this. And so we we have to prove that. Like, we have to back them up at their word. And that's how I've always thought, even before I knew LaKendria, before the Super Bowl experience was going to happen.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Desiree, I want to hit to you because I know Sarah's itching, and I know I feel it, and she got something. But I do want Desiree, I want to come to you because you are, again, as we've said a couple times, you're the first Black woman to own a winery license in the state of Florida. And I know you have a wine partnership with a company in Oregon, but your stuff is in Total Wines all over the state of Florida. Yes. All over the state. And so I would love just briefly kind of talk about how that feels to be the first. Were you shocked when you found that you were the first? And how you got into Total Wines? I'm telling y'all, I've gotten both bottles and got 2 more. It's in Total Wines. Please go pick it up in Florida. We're going to try to get you in Georgia, where Sarah is, and other places, because we believe in growing more.
We just got approved in Georgia. So we'll be in Total Wine there very soon, in the next 60 days, 30 to 60 days. We just got to get the wine from Oregon to Georgia and on the shelves. So we're approved in Total nationally.
Oh, good. Awesome.
Yes. So as we get compliant in every state, then we can kind of go in there. So it has been quite a journey, to tell you the truth. You know, I had to, when the pandemic hit, really decide, it was probably a little bit before I started preparing to wind up my direct-to-consumer retail operations, because it was taking up so much time. And I knew we had a wonderful opportunity to hit distribution, not just nationally, but internationally. I'd been approached by some folks in the islands to start a winery operation there, and some other places. It was I think wild things were starting to happen. So I decided to wind up retail operations, focus on distribution. Then the pandemic hits, and the money we got from retail ops, we invested in a brand manager that really knew how to play the game. She knew everything about the wine industry, importing, getting with distributors, getting with retailers. And what's really interesting about her, she was the first woman in Rhode Island to have a liquor license. And here she is. I mean, she could be working with any brand. She only works with a handful because that's all she has time for. And she chose to take me under her wing, come in, and she helped really elevate the brand. It was unbelievable. So she helped me reformulate our pricing. We worked on some new changes to packaging. Then we got an opportunity with Republic National, which is the second largest distributor in the country. And
wow,
basically the big chains won't talk to you if you don't have a distributor that can service them, right?
Okay.
So the doors started opening.
So
women helping women.
Yeah. So we have 5 minutes left. And I have another question, but it's going to be longer than 5 minutes. We have 5 minutes on In Touch News. And I just sent y'all a message. Can y'all stay on for 10 more minutes after we get off? Because I do have a question. And I know Sarah, this is one of the hashtags that she uses. But before we close out, I want each of you all to share how people can reach you, your social media handles, whatever it is that people can reach you. And if you all can stay on, we're going to continue talking. We're going to drop off on In Touch News. So you'll hear the end you'll hear our ending song, but we'll continue to stream live on our Facebook page, because I do have 2 more questions for y'all and I really want to hear your answers. But before we close out on In Touch, I do want you all to share how people can reach you. And I'm going to start with you, Desiree. Tell us, your website, your social media handles, how folks can reach out to you.
You can reach us at mermosa.com, MERMOSA.com. Our handle on Instagram and Facebook is Mermosa Wines. DM us, email us, smoke signal us. We're around. We're real people.
Lennise. Oh, you're on mute. Unmute yourself. That's okay.
Sorry about that. All of our social media handles are Livio's Catering, LIVYOS, and the word catering. We're on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and then our website is livios.com, and that's LIVYOS.com.
Lennise, I do have a question though. Are you able to cater outside of the state of Florida? Because Sarah is in, I'm trying to make connections. Sarah is in Georgia. Are you able to cater outside the state of Florida?
First of all, let me just say, I got notes here. So with all of you guys, I want to definitely stay connected, but yes, we can. We've actually flown all the way to St. Louis. A corporate client of ours flew us to St. Louis to cater their holiday Christmas party. And so, yes, to answer your question, yes, we
Perfect.
can.
Wonderful. Y'all, how can people reach you?
All of my social media handles are Ya Laford, Laford, and my website is yalaford.com.
Perfect. Sarah, you on mute, baby. You're on mute.
Apologies. Realty you like, so I'll give you two. So handbags you like is our fashion side of things. If there's anyone who wants to go forward in merchandising and want to get manufacturing and things of that nature, we're handbags you like across all social media platforms. But the real focus right now is affordable housing. So Realty You Like. We actually have a website, which is realtyyoulike.com. That's REALTY, the letter ULIKE.com. And together we can make greater impact through real estate.
Perfect. So we're going to go ahead and close out from In Touch News. If you all have to drop off, I understand, but I have two more questions that I really, really want to ask you all, because I think it'll be helpful for me and for our listeners. But for those of you all who are on In Touch News, thank you all so much for joining us this morning. I told y'all March was going to be fire. It has been fire. I am so grateful to everybody this last month who has come and thought it not robbery to join me on this show. I've done it by myself for 3 weeks, but I got my boo back next week. But next week, tune in, because we're having a conversation about race, and we are inviting three of our white friends on to have a real conversation about race. And so I would love for y'all to tune in next week, 11 o'clock. Soul Purpose Show, same place here and on In Touch News. You all be continually blessed, and thank you so much for joining us today. See y'all later.